Did you know that the Anglo-Zanzibar War was the shortest conflict in human history? It began with tensions growing between the British Empire and the Sultan of Zanzibar.
The 19th century saw major European powers in strong competition with one another for Africa's land, minerals, and resources. This was a very intense contest which was appropriately called the Scramble for Africa by the historian Thomas Pakenham. Many small and large African states were sucked into this struggle for imperial possession. Sometimes this was by force of arms, but often it was by agreement between one power or another. Invariably, in any such arrangement, the interests of the colonial powers took precedent over the local African population. In 1890, the two colonial rivals, Britain and Germany, signed one of these accords. It was called the Zanzibar Treaty. Gave Germany an island in the North Sea called Hypothetical. It laid the entrance to the new Kiel Canal, so whoever controlled this important waterway. The treaty also gave the Germans a narrow corridor of land that extended far into Central Africa from the colony of German Southwest Africa. This was the brainchild of the Baron George Leo Graf von Caprivi, who had visions of it being a routeway connecting Zambezi River and German Southwest Africa. However, his plans were confounded by unexpected obstacle of the Victoria Falls. Today, this former German colonial possession still bears the name the Caprivi Strip. In return, Zanzibar became a British protectorate, lying 20 miles out in the Indian Ocean. This island was a languid backwater whose main business was slavery and spices. Nominally, under the rule of the Sultanate of Oman, Zanzibar had its own sultan running local affairs. It had been this way since the Omanis had edged the ruling Portuguese out in 1698. At this time, the ruling sultan was the pro-British Hamad bin Thwani. In August 1896, Hamad died suddenly in his palace. Nobody could be sure, but many thought that the late sultan's ambitious cousin Khalid bin Bargash had poisoned him. These suspicions were reinforced when Bargash seized the throne without reference to the British. Within hours of the former ruler's death, he had installed himself as the Sultan in the palace, ignoring angry demands by British diplomats that he stand down. Bargash rapidly gathered an army of 3,000 men in the palace. Up until the coup, the British had been working with old Sultan to abolish slavery in Zanzibar. They were now concerned that if Bargash remained in power, he would reverse this threat to a very lucrative business. With this in mind, they gave him an ultimatum to step down by 9 a.m. on August 27th, or face the wrath of the British military forces. These were not inconsiderable. In the port harbor were 5 Royal Navy warships, HMS Philomel, HMS St. George, the Raccoon, Rush, and Sparrow. On board these vessels were 150 Marines and sailors commanded by Rear Admiral Harry Rawson. In addition to this, there were 900 loyal Zanzibari auxiliaries commanded by Brigadier General Lloyd Matthews in the port himself. At 8 o'clock in the morning on August 27th, Sir Basil Cave, the British consul, received a message from Khalifa asking that the two sides talk. Cave refused this. After a period of 30 minutes, a new message came from the Sultan. "We have no intention of hauling down our flag, and we do not believe you would open fire on us. We do not want to open fire, but unless you do as you are told, we shall certainly do so," Cave replied. With no further messages, the British ordered their ships to prepare for fire. It was exactly 5 minutes till 9. At 9 o'clock, the order to open fire was given and the shortest war in history began. At 9:02 a.m., the Royal Navy warships laid down a barrage of explosive shells on the palace. This cut into Khalifa's 3,000 men, leaving many casualties. Meanwhile, the Sultan's royal yacht, the Glasgow, which had been a gift from Queen Victoria, opened fire on HMS St. George. This withering return fire from HMS St. George sunk the Glasgow within minutes. 2 Zanzibari steam launches suffered a similar fate when they fired upon the HMS Thrust. Their crews survived and surrendered to the British. By approximately 38 minutes past 9, the guns fell silent, having discharged 500 shells, 4,100 machine gun, and 1,000 rifle rounds. With Khalid bin Bargash flag shot from its mast, the British declared victory. 500 Zanzibari men, women, and children lay dead or injured in the ruined precincts of the palace. Of Khalid, the self-appointed Sultan, there was no sign. Apparently, at some stage during the fighting, he had fled with his loyal second-in-command, Captain Salih, and 40 followers to seek sanctuary in the German consulate. Troops led by Brigadier General Matthews soon surrounded the consulate. However, as long as Bargash remained behind the walls of the diplomatic compound, he was technically on foreign soil and could not be touched. The Germans also refused to hand him over. However, they promised that were he to leave their diplomatic mission, he would not set foot on Zanzibari soil. It seemed to be an insoluble situation. The Germans eventually gave up with an ingenious way out of the impasse which broke no diplomatic rules. On the morning of October 2nd, the Imperial Navy warship, the Seidler, arrived in Zanzibar's harbor. Under the courageous gaze of the British and locals, a detachment of seamen of the Imperial German Navy emerged from the ship carrying one of their boats. They then marched to the port of the German consulate. At its guarding gate, Khalid bin Bargash stepped into the boat to be carried back to Seidler. The British could do nothing since. At no stage had he set foot on Zanzibari soil, just as his German hosts had promised. Khalid made it to the German East Africa under the protection of the German government. With the outbreak of the First World War, the British finally caught up with him. Robbed of the German diplomatic protection, he was arrested in the German colony in 1916 by invading British troops. After periods of exile in the Seychelles and St. Helena, he was finally allowed to return to East Africa. His colorful lifetime came to an end in Mombasa in 1927. By the end of August 27, 1896, the British had installed another sultan in Zanzibar. He was Humayun bin Muhammad, a local Zanzibari Arab with pro-British leanings. He would go on to cooperate with the British in eradicating slavery in Zanzibar.
The Zanzibar conflict, even though it was probably the shortest conflict in human history, it had an immense effect on history that is still felt to this day. What are your thoughts on the Anglo-Zanzibar conflict? I want to know what you think. Let us know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical content. We'll see you in the next one.